Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. Today's presentation, I would like to talk about Mary Magdalene from the Islamic Sufi perspective. I dedicate this to someone near and dear to my heart, and I represent myself under free speech and education and entertainment purposes. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy. This presentation is created for entertainment, artistic expression, and exploration of spiritual ideas. It does not claim religious authority, doctrinal accuracy, or prescriptive theological truth. Rather, it offers an interpretive, poetic engagement with symbols and stories across traditions. The reflections that follow draw on Sufi metaphors, mystical poetry, and cross-cultural imaginations intended to inspire healing, empowerment, and inner awakening. Please receive these words as evocative guidance, not literal doctrine. Seen through a Sufi lens, Mary Magdalene emerges not merely as a historical figure, but as the archetype of the awakened feminine heart, a seeker whose sincerity and longing pierce the veils that blind others. Her devotion becomes a mirror for the disciple, showing how yearning can transmute into luminous knowing. Sufi teachers celebrate those moved by ishq, which is divine love, regardless of origin. In this spirit, Magdalene represents the one whose inner gaze discerns the hidden unity behind forms. Her story invites seekers to reimagine devotion as a path of radical perception. Sufi psychology holds that those broken by life often become the clearest vessels for divine light. Mary Magdalene embodies this paradox, misunderstood, maligned, and deeply wounded, yet chosen to witness truth when many could not. Her scars are the doorway through which grace moves. For women who carry trauma, abandonment, betrayal, silencing, her journey whispers an essential truth. Your wounds are not evidence of failure, but signposts of depth. In mystical terms, the cracked heart is the only heart wide enough to hold an ocean of mercy. And also what Rumi says, that the wound is where the light enters. Magdalene mirrors the Sufi traveler, the Salik, who descends into inner valleys before ascending toward union. Her path models the station of sincere return, Toba, when one turns towards the heart with honesty and humility, abandoning old masks for presence. Sufi maps measure the seeker by persistence rather than perfection. Magdalene's constancy, her willingness to remain when certainty collapsed, illustrates the Sufi teaching that the true traveler remains present through darkness until the dawn of realization. In Sufi cosmology, the feminine heart is a refined instrument of perception, able to detect subtle currents the intellect cannot. Mary Magdalene exemplifies this heart intelligence, sensing truths through longing, intuition, and embodied presence rather than through argument or doctrine. For women healing from trauma, this reframe is radical. Sensitivity is not pathology, but a sacred technology. When cultivated, it becomes a compass that guides through relationships, grief, and renewal toward an integrated wholeness. The tomb in Sufi metaphor often stands for the annihilation of ego, fana. Mary Magdalene's vigil at the empty tomb symbolizes the courage to stand before death of self-constructed identities, expectations, and familiar comforts without fleeing. Those who can witness emptiness without panic are granted a vision beyond ordinary sight. Magdalene's recognition of resurrection becomes less a claim about historical events and more a poetic emblem of the heart's awakening after intense loss. Sufis teach that love grants a form of perception that outstrips rationality, an inner seeing that discerns the hidden threads of being. Mary Magdalene's devotion can be read as initiatory, love that transforms into a kind of prophetic insight, revealing what is veiled. For the wounded feminine, this teaching is liberating. Intense love is not disordered weakness, but a portal to deeper knowing. When guided by discernment, love becomes the heart's true instrument of awakening. History has often misread those who carry divine tenderness Sufi accounts frequently portray saints as socially misunderstood or maligned. Magdalene's historical misrepresentation echoes the Sufi truth that the world rarely recognizes its saints until after their passing. This slide speaks directly to women who feel unseen. Your seeming invisibility may accompany an inner flame the world is not ready to hold. Society's misreading does not diminish the sacredness of what you carry. In Sufi teaching, shame is like a veil that obscures the innate worth of the soul. Magdalene's narrative demonstrates the alchemy possible when shame is witnessed and transformed into intimacy with the divine, when humiliation becomes a doorway to compassion. For survivors of trauma, the map is clear. Shame loses power when brought into the steady light of remembrance and mercy. The healing heart learns to hold its story without collapse, turning past indignities into sources of empathy and strength. True devotion in Sufism, Ubudiyya, liberates rather than confines. Mary Magdalene's devotion frees her from the prison of social fear and egoic pretense. It roots her in an inner sovereignty that is quiet, steadfast, and awake. For those recovering from relational trauma, devotion to inner truth and to compassionate practice becomes a radical act of freedom, a return to self-honesty that dissolves patterns of seeking validation from the outside. Sufi spirituality prizes mushahada, the sacred witnessing of reality without turning away. Mary Magdalene's capacity to witness suffering and the unexpected exemplifies this bravery, to see without flinching and to remain present until clarity arrives. Healing begins with such bearing. When a woman learns to witness her own pain, desires, and boundaries without self-abandonment, transformation is possible. Presence becomes the soil in which trust can regrow. Sufism often teaches that the beloved hides within paradox and loss to awaken the seeker. Magdalene's loyalty reflects a recognition of this hidden friend, an inner presence that endures beyond outer forms and promises. For those who loved and lost, the solace is that the beloved changes shape but does not vanish. The inner friend becomes the companion that teaches resilience, insight, and a reoriented trust. Abandonment is an ancient wound many women carry, manifested across generations as fear of being left or unseen. Mary Magdalene's steadfastness in the face of desertion models how loneliness can be transformed into inner sovereignty and spiritual maturity. This slide offers a practical reframing. Abandonment can catalyze an inward sovereignty whereby a woman learns to be both companion and a sanctuary to herself, finding dignity in self-possession rather than in dependence or codependent relationships. Mystical traditions often entrust particular hearts with intimacies the world cannot yet bear. Mary Magdalene carries this role as a keeper of hidden teachings, an image resonant with the Sufi notion of marifa, which is the inner knowing granted to purified hearts. To the woman in need of affirmation, the debts you hold are an inheritance, not a burden. Your interiority maintains a lineage of wisdom accessible through patient listening and ethical courage. Sufi poets speak of grace descending upon the softened heart. Magdalene exemplifies a feminine path where transformation proceeds through surrender, tenderness, and embodied compassion rather than through force. For trauma survivors, this offers a hopeful model. Embodied grace is active and transformative, guiding the heart to translate past pain into present wisdom and gentle power. The Sufi path names the egoic self as nafs, the lower self, the shadow that resists healing. Magdalene's inward work mirrors the inner discipline of confronting fear, attachment, and defensive patterns until the heart awakens to a steadier presence. Shadow work asks for compassion alongside honesty. The wounded parts must be met with patience to be integrated. This is how transformation becomes sustainable rather than episodic. Mary Magdalene's message is simple and radical for the modern woman. Power arises from authenticity, vulnerability, and the willingness to remain present with what is true. Magdalene asks us to claim voice and boundary while continuing to open the heart. For the woman you love, and any men and women out there who have a divine feminine and women in general that you hold love for, this message is practical. Let authenticity guide relationship choices, healing practices, and the reclaiming of joy. The heart is both navigator and a home. Sufism honors the dance of Jamal, beauty, the feminine principle, and Jalal, majesty, the masculine principle. Magdalene's awakening radiates Jamal, softness, receptivity, and an inner beauty that balances strength with tenderness. Healing relationships requires the balance, presence rather than possession, reciprocity rather than collapse. The modern healing task is to cultivate healthy interplay between these poles. And the beauty of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, is that the Rahman is feminine and the Rahim is masculine. So even Allah embodies that androgynous, genderless, formless energy, and how in Islam your faith is not complete until the two opposites come together in matrimony. And the same is implied with Mary Magdalene and Jesus, Prophet Isa, peace be upon him. Sufi practices, breath remembrance, zikr, heart-centered meditation, sacred journaling, and compassionate witnessing create the inner spaciousness necessary for old wounds to loosen their grip. Magdalene's energy encourages practical steps. Reclaim your voice, honor boundaries, cultivate slow presence, and ritualize small acts of self-love. These are the everyday rites that rebuild trust in life and relationships. Mary Magdalene's journey teaches that love refined by suffering becomes wisdom. The heart that has been broken and mended becomes a luminous instrument of compassion and clarity. May this story bless any woman in your life that you love. May she discover sovereignty within tenderness, courage within vulnerability, and the unshakable truth that no darkness can fully extinguish her light. These are the sources that I have used in this presentation and the primary inspirations and references that are cited across the slides. And please definitely check them out at your leisure, convenience, especially Faridun Din Attar's Conference of the Birds and the other references that I have listed here. Thank you for witnessing this journey. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. And all my videos are under the copyright laws of fair use, which is for the purpose of education, free speech, entertainment, and information purposes. Thank you so much. All rights reserved.